Hello folks, and welcome to the channel, or welcome back. And in this video we're going to repaint the bodywork of old Sporty. The side will remain blank aluminum together with the bonnet, but the fenders, the dash and the rear tub will all be painted in metallic blue. And this is the color that I'm going to use. And before we start to work on the body of old Sporty, I took some of your advice that you all provided on the previous videos. And one of the comments was that the belt on the bottom was very close to the cooling hose, and you're absolutely right. The belt, which is used to drive the alternator and the water pump, was very close to one of the cooling hoses on the bottom. So whenever I was doing high rotations per minute, the belt would jiggle and it would actually touch the hose, which is not a good thing. So I went for a shorter belt. Now this is the shorter belt. Now that will allow me to move the alternator more up, and now I'm going to have quite some clearance. And this is what I mean. See, if I can move this up with a shorter belt, this is going to go up and it's going to create more space on the bottom. So the way that I'm protecting the belt is with a small piece of aluminum that I bended over the tube and I glued it on there with silicone kit. And then the belt is now a smaller belt, and now you can see I have at least an inch of play in between the two. So that should now be alright and not be an issue anymore. And we also added some new panels on the bottom, and I created this ducting for the oil cooler. We reworked a bit the cover, which is used to protect the pedal box and the master brake cylinders. And also I put the battery in a box, and this is the box, and we placed some grommets in there. They were all missing before. Put on the top some insulation on it so the battery cannot move. Inside the battery is also surrounded with insulation, and then we got the cover that goes on top of that. There we go. And I think this is looking pretty nice. And that's it, the battery box and the pedal box together with the master brake cylinders. I got new short neck trumpets or air horns, and I installed them already with some clamps. But the funny part was when I got them is that they were extended with another piece like this. So they were very long, like so. And in essence, they would actually slide into the carburetor. But you need to have the right secondary venturis. Now the venturis that I have are these. And as you can see, there is no space to slide it in. Now the newer venturis, they actually don't have this color on them, so then you can slide these horns into it. So I had to cut these pieces off. You know, it's always something when you work on cars, you have to be a bit inventive sometimes. And we stripped to some extent the interior. I took the tunnel out that is covering up the drive shaft, and I took the seats out so that we can recondition everything a bit better and have full access to the cabling underneath the dashboard to check all that out, and to recreate this panel here because that panel was badly bent, so I already straightened it up and I reinstalled it. And now it's about time to start working on the bodywork. So first I'm going to paint some loose parts, which is the nose and the two rear fenders. Those I will paint separately in the paint booth. But before I can do so, I need to remove all the lights and the blinkers and so on. And then we're going to sand it down and then repair some bad areas. The body panels are polyester and they are cracked here and there, but that's not too bad. We can fix all that. Overall, the fenders are not too bad, but they do have some damage here and there on the edges, so that needs to be sanded down and then filled up again with some polyester so that we can actually end up with a nice finish. You can see how that is actually loose here, so we probably need to put a mat on here to have that corrected. The body panels are polyester, so we're going to sand them down nicely until they're nice and smooth, probably with a grit 800, which is going to be the smallest grit. Then we're going to repair the bad areas, if any. And then we're going to apply a high build surfacer onto that. We're going to let it dry for about half an hour. Then we're going to sand it down again, but that's going to be wet sanding, so we have a really smooth surface. Then we'll apply a base coat, and the base coat will be blue, which is a metallic based paint. And then we're going to apply the clear coat on top of that. So I'm going to do it a bit like what they call them wet in wet. So that's going to be a little bit of work. So we're going to start now, first of all, by sanding down the fenders. And before we go into sand anything, I want to take off all the pieces that I can take off. I don't want to tape everything up because it never gives you a good finish. And I always like to keep things together in a box so I won't lose anything. It's always good to take pictures when you do this kind of work, or a video, so you know exactly which lens was sitting where. Remember, this was the yellow one, which is the blinker. So when you mount everything back, you don't mount the opposite. These small screws, they can really be a problem. Sometimes you can't get it loose because it's all corroded in the back. And in that case, you might want to grind this top off and then just replace them later with new ones. And they also riveted the parts together. So now I need to remove the rivets. And I know that a grit 400 is pretty rough, but that's the intent because I want to have the high build surface gripping very well onto the surface. So let's clean it up. So the cone is ready to be painted, so let's move it aside and start working on the fenders. Alright, so I'm going to start first with the fender that has the damage on it, because let's fix the damage first. That's this area, so this I'm going to grind down and then see what we need to do with it. Alright, so this area is really bad, so I'm going to grind it down first to see what the situation is. Looks like they placed some rubber on it. This piece is really loose. I grinded down as much as I could the edges here that were damaged, and now I'm going to put some patches up with new polyester mats. So for that I'm going to cut some pieces first, place it on there to see how it fits, and then we go into use polyester on it and then put it down, and then we put some putty on top of it, and that should then look okay. Okay, so I've cut a few pieces of fiberglass. So now we're gonna mix the polyester resin, if I can get it open. There we go. With some hardener. And it's about 2%. So a lot of resin and 2% hardener. Now this stuff lasts about 20 minutes or so. So you know, I just do a little swirl in it. You can measure it if you want. I don't. It looks like the sun comes and goes. I'm sorry for the light, guys, because the sun is coming and going. And then you give it a good, so let's give it a good stare. And that should be good enough. And now we're gonna use a brush, you know, to saturate it, really. Now the brush afterwards you can throw away. It's gonna be useless. I'm gonna soak these areas as well with the same resin before I put it on. Okay, so the first long piece is going to be that one. And of course that does not stain because it's in a curve. But that's okay. I'll put some tape up in a few minutes so that it will stay. That's why I have the tape ready. Don't worry about the tape, guys. That will sand off easily afterwards. But on a curve like this always has worked best for me. Oops. There goes my glove. Need to change the gloves because I don't like this stuff on my hands. Yeah, it's a bit of a dirty job, polyester, but it's got to be done. So I know this looks a bit weird for the moment, but I'm going to let it dry now, and then we put another coat up of these mats, because the more layers you put on, the stronger it becomes. Now if you need to clear up drips, a good product is acetone. You know, that's the kind of stuff ladies use to clean their nails, the nail polish. And that's good stuff to clean up this polyester. It wipes off very nicely. So I'm just wiping off the drips that I had on it. I peeled off the paper that was on it, and then I applied a coat of polyester putty onto it. It's still very rough, but that's all right. And then when it's dry, we're gonna sand it up. This stuff is drying real fast, so in a few minutes I can start sanding it, and then I'm going to give it a second run, maybe a third run, maybe a fourth run, until I have the shape correct. So it cured, so now I can start sanding it. I'm going to sand it with a grit 60. So that was the first coat, and we placed it more or less into the right shape, but still it's a bit uneven. So now I'm going to create the next layer on it until it's perfect. I'm going to start at the top. And it's very windy today. And I'm not too much worried about it that it's not even yet. That will come. I'm not going to try to get the perfection out of it. I'd rather do it twice, sand, and do it again. I have sanded down the polyester patches and all the repairs we've done on the fenders. So the two fenders are here. We sanded them down with a grit 400, and also the nose cone. So now I'm going to put up a high build primer on that. I'm using what we call a Chromax 1057R. I always have been using this when I found this a very good product. I'm going to apply it with my SATA 5000, and this is a great gun to use. And I'm using a data sheet or a spreadsheet, and you might have seen me doing that before, because I'm always going for the right mix, because I want to have a perfect and smooth finish on that fender and the nose cone. I'm going to mix the surfacer with some activator and some primer in the right mix, and for that I'm always using my data sheet. And of course I place it on a scale because I want to do it right. Now before I put it on the scale, I want to protect the scale a bit because I don't want to spill paint on it. Now of course it all depends what kind of paint you're going to use for the right properties. I'm going to zeroize my scale. There we go. And then let me start putting my gloves on, because I don't want to get all my hands dirty with paint. Otherwise the girlfriend isn't going to be too happy. Now first of all I'm going to stir up this paint a bit, because it's been sitting on the shelf for a while and I don't have a shaker, so let me do that first. Yeah. So that's 300 grams. So now we need to add 66 grams of thinner. Yeah, just enough. Actually, I have a little bit more, but it doesn't really matter. And then I'm going to apply the activator. Now that will reduce my pot life quite a bit to 1 hour. So I need on this stuff, I need 1133 grams. So that's about 409. Okay, that's all I'm going to need. Now, you might have seen that I dropped a few things in there. It doesn't really matter because I will filter it anyhow. So let's stir this all up. So everything should be almost good to go. So I'm going to take a little Zift to put it on here, so I don't want to get the debris inside that I actually had falling into the cup here. And let's Zift it in. All right, we will seal it up. And now we're going to get in the paint booth, but I'm not going to take the camera in the paint booth, guys, because it's going to be too messy. So you have to trust me. So I finished painting the two fenders and the nose cone in a high build surfacer, and now I'm going to let it dry, and then we're going to sand it slightly, probably with a grit 800 to 1000, and then we'll apply the base coat. Now, I didn't show you the painting itself, and I know, and I probably should have shown that to you, but I have a new camera and I don't want to spoil it in the paint booth, to be very honest. And if you want to see on how to paint and the paint types and the paint gun and how you can adjust all this, have a look on my YouTube channel. There's plenty of videos on how to build your own paint booth, but also on how to paint and the different types of paint. So I'm going to let it cure, I'm going to get some dinner, and then I'll come back later and I will finish it up and we'll apply the base coat, the blue coat, onto it. I've let the high build surfacer cure overnight, and now it's really dry. You don't have to do this because typically it dries very fast, but as you can see, this is really smooth. There is no dust inside or anything. Orange peel, nothing at all, so very smooth. So now this is almost ready to receive the base coat, which is going to be the blue metallic paint, but I'm not going to put it on yet right away. First I'm going to sand this down again and wet sand it, and I'm going to use a grit of 1000 to smoothen up even further that high build surfacer. I'm going to do it by hand. Now some people like to use a sanding block, and most of you will probably say use a sanding block, but I like my hands better. I have more feeling, and I will be very careful not to make any scratches or deeper dents or whatever by rubbing with your hands, because your fingers could be pushing harder and then you could have tracks on it, and you don't want that to happen. But it's just a matter of folding the paper a lot and then, you know, be careful with it while you're sanding it. Now, if I had a real flat surface, I would be using a sanding block. But this is all curved, so I'd rather do it by hand. So let me rub down this cone and the fenders, and then we continue in the paint booth. And this time I will put a camera in the paint booth so you see me painting. I've got the parts in the booth, so now I'm going to blow some clean air on it, and then I'm going to rub it clean with some thinner to make sure that there's no grease left on it. So I'm going to wipe them clean now. In fact, I'm going to degrease it, and I have degreasing cloth for that. You can buy this in any paint shop. And I'm using some celluloses for that, just to clean it. And when I say cellulose, I actually mean a cellulose thinner, right? All right, so let's clean this up really nice.
All right, so I'm about ready to start painting, and the first thing I'm going to do is see how my fan is on my spray gun. So I've adjusted the pressure from about to 1.5 to 2 kilograms, and now I'm going to test my fan. Alright, nice and distributed.
I have applied the base coat to both the fenders and the nose cone. I'm going to let it dry now, and then we're going to apply the clear coat. Now, the base coat doesn't give you any protection really, it's very soft, but it's the clear lac that will give you the gloss and the protection. So I'm going to apply probably about 2 to 3 coats onto that, and then we should be all right. But I think the color looks pretty neat, and the end result will be all right. So let me prepare the clear coat now, and then we start spraying again. We have finished applying the clear coat, and this is now looking quite nice. I don't have any drips or orange peel. I did notice that there is a little fly in one of them, but then we can polish that out later. That's the good thing about working with this clear lac. Let me show you that bugger that's dropped into my paint. And right there in the middle is that bugger that just dropped into my paint. The good thing is it is not covered under any clear coat, it's just been stuck on top, and we can easily remove that later on. But the end result provided a real smooth finish. And now it's time to let it all dry up and cure overnight. And then we take it out of the paint booth and we continue working on the rest of the car in the same color. So folks, we have come to the end of this video, and hopefully you enjoyed it as much as I did. And in the next video we're going to spray the fenders of old Sporty and the tub. And after that we'll continue with the engine of old Rusty, because I have received all the parts to assemble now the engine of old Rusty, and hopefully we can do a trial run very soon. I'll see you then. Bye bye.